This girl has been reborn 13 times, but each time, she's been tortured and killed by the Saintess. Everyone thinks the Saintess is a hero who saved the world, but all her power comes from this tortured girl. This country is called the Austin Empire. The Saintess has the same authority as the Emperor. The world was once ravaged by monsters. Corpses were everywhere. People could only feel despair in the face of this disaster. But one day, the goddess descended. She brought hope to the people and successfully repelled the darkness. Afterward, summoned by the goddess, the Saintess appeared. The current Saintess of the Empire is named Leavian. Yet now, she is in the dungeon, to the confusion of others. Leavian simply and piously stated that she was unwilling to abandon her believer. Then she was taken to a cell. The girl, seeing Leavian walk in, showed a look of hatred. Leavian explained that her power was fading and she needed the girl's help. When she glanced at a glass bottle nearby, her expression immediately changed. She asked why the amount this time was so small. Seeing this, a knight nearby volunteered to help replenish the Saintess's power. The Saintess happily agreed. Hearing this, the girl showed an expression of disbelief. Then, the knight stepped forward and drew the holy sword imbued with the goddess's blessing. He cut the girl's hand with one stroke. Then a steady stream of blood flowed into the bottle. It was soon full. The knight handed it over. Leavian took the bottle and looked at it for a moment. Then, without hesitation, she drank it all in one gulp. Immediately, a surge of power flowed through her body. Amazing, Holy Spirit Dina. Seeing Dina's resentful gaze, Leavian slapped the girl. "Do you think I enjoy drinking this filthy blood? It's all your fault, you bastard, for being born into this world and stealing my victory." Dina looked at Leavian and gradually fainted. In her heart, she swore she would return. After an unknown amount of time, a voice came from outside the door. It was time for her meal, which meant having her tongue held and being force-fed dry water. Dina knew her chance had come. She immediately took control of one of the people and had them untie the bandage around her mouth. Dina smiled and thanked the girl who had freed her. Then, she decisively bit her own tongue. This was the girl's 14th death. When she woke up again, she heard Leavian's concerned voice. Hearing this voice, Dina stared at her with murderous eyes. "We're friends, right?" Leavian's words made Dina recall the scene of her capture in her previous life. Facing Dina, who was crying and begging to be spared, Leavian chuckled, saying she never considered her a friend. "To me, you're lower than a sewer rat." Thinking of this, Dina could no longer bear Leavian's false affection and made an excuse to hurriedly flee the scene. Afterward, Dina wanted to ask the people at the temple for some painkillers, but everyone accused her of not being able to overcome even this small difficulty. Just as Dina was about to go back, a sudden, intense headache struck. But she knew there were still many things to do. She needed to return to her room and check the date recorded in her diary. When she saw the date was year 381, she froze. Because all her previous rebirths had been in year 382, before the current Saintess's death. Could this be her final rebirth? To escape this cycle of fate, she had tried countless times. But no matter what kind of injury, it would always be healed by her power. The only way she knew to kill herself was to be bound to the holy magic tool in the prison. Then Dina came to the statue of the goddess. She had once been grateful to the goddess, because, as a beggar, she was always hungry, until she was discovered by the temple to possess power. Finally, she didn't have to go hungry every day and had a place that was willing to take her in. But in the end, she still lost everything. She looked at the statue in front of her and asked why it had given her such power. Didn't she want to be used anymore? The girl possessed power and should have become a revered saintess. But she was imprisoned, used as a tool to provide power to the false saintess. After being tortured and abused countless times, the girl found a chance to commit suicide and end her life. But every time, she would be reborn back to the time when she was a saintess candidate. So being captured again was only a matter of time. So he hoped to find a way to permanently end the cycle of hellish reincarnation. And just now, Dina thought of a way to end it all. That is, to find an opportunity to attack Duke de Hue. He is the Empire's murderer. Countless lives have been lost at his hands. So after she attacks him, it wouldn't be strange for her to be executed on the spot. And next, it will soon be the annual temple celebration. As one of the 4 great nobles of the Empire, Duke de Hue will definitely be there. Thinking of this, Dina accidentally bumped into someone. But at this moment, she didn't care about the other person's insults at all. She only hoped in her heart that Duke de Hue could completely end her life. And then, Dina was suddenly called out to on the road. It turned out to be the blonde knight, Harid. Dina had once admired Harid for his kindness, but he later became Leavian's knight. And throughout Dina's countless hellish reincarnations, he never once tried to save her. He is a complete hypocrite. So Dina directly ignored Harid's concern. She brushed past him and ran off. At this moment, Duke de Hue was preparing his attire for the temple celebration, and the butler understood at this moment that because of his poor relationship with the temple, he was deliberately wearing black clothes to the white-themed temple celebration. Just as the butler was about to suggest the Duke change his clothes, the Duke gave a benevolent look indicating his decision. So the matter of the clothes was settled. At this time, the Duke's two sons noticed that their father was going out. So the two asked their father to bring back some gifts when he went out. Dennis wanted the book that was being sold at the Divine Transformation this time, while Judy excitedly said that she wanted a little sister. Duke de Hue had a headache when he heard this request, but when he saw Judy's obviously unhappy expression and her accusation that he was favoring Dennis, he patiently explained to Judy, if you want a playmate of the same age, I can satisfy that. But a sister is not possible, because your mother is no longer. So what? Hearing this, Duke de Hue was suddenly embarrassed and didn't know how to explain. So he turned to Dennis for help, and Dennis said, just adopt a little sister. On the way to the temple, the butler suggested that there was no need to overthink it. It was just a whim of the young master. But the Duke didn't think so. In order to compensate for the lack of maternal love, he satisfied their every whim, which led them to obtain anything too easily. And this also made them easily tire of anything, even people. If he could find a good child this time, perhaps it could make up for this problem of the brothers. On the day of the temple celebration, Duke de Hue sat impatiently in the uppermost seat. At this moment, Dina couldn't imagine that the distance between them was so far. And just then, two girls ordered Dina to go to the warehouse to carry chairs. But Dina, having reincarnated many times, had already seen enough of these kinds of petty scenes. So she bluntly refused them. I am a noble. You, a common-born orphan, are so presumptuous. At this time, Dina noticed that Duke de Hue had left his seat. She abruptly stood up and started looking for the Duke's location. But just as she found the Duke's location and was about to chase after him, she was grabbed by the red-haired girl from earlier. While the two were tugging at each other, the temple staff stopped them, and Dina simply agreed to go to the warehouse to carry chairs. She hid the dagger in her sleeve while searching for the Duke. When she came outside, she finally found him. So Dina rushed up and called out to Duke de Hue. Facing the murderer who had countless lives on his hands, she requested a chance to speak with the Duke privately. Seeing that she was wearing the attire of a Saintess candidate, the Duke agreed. When Dina came before the Duke, she pulled a dagger from her sleeve and then stabbed at him with all her might. But she was easily subdued. You want to kill me with this? Then the Duke pointed the dagger at the girl's neck and demanded that Dina reveal the person behind her. The girl possessed the strongest life force in the world, but she only wanted to die, because after countless hellish reincarnations and rebirths, she only wanted to end this endless secret. And just now, Dina had a dagger held against her throat. But there wasn't a trace of fear in her heart, only a yearning for death. Suddenly, she grabbed the Duke's hand and thrust it towards her own neck. But in the end, it only left a wound on her neck. After stopping the girl's suicide attempt, the Duke also found it unbelievable. Then he began to question Dina's purpose. But Dina just knelt on the ground, speechless. The Duke lost his patience and ordered his men to send Dina back to the temple. Hearing this, Dina pleaded repeatedly not to be sent back. It doesn't matter how you treat me. Just don't send me back. Please, just kill me here. Hearing this, the Duke ordered his men to release her. He then inquired about Dina's age. Learning that she was only 12 years old, he pondered for a moment. Lifting Dina's messy hair, he confirmed she was a lovely little girl. After this, the Duke offered to adopt Dina as his daughter. But Dina believed that she was just a lowly orphan, unworthy of being adopted. The Duke frowned. He then explained to Dina, from this moment on, you are the most noble of children. Hearing this, Dina's eyes lit up, but she quickly reminded herself not to get her hopes up. However, to escape the temple, she agreed to the Duke's offer. At that moment, the Duke thought it strange that this gentle girl, who couldn't even wield a knife and had no killer instinct, would have such a desperate expression. The Duke then gave Dina what he thought was a friendly smile, but Dina genuinely felt happy about it. The Duke hadn't expected anyone to not be afraid after seeing his intimidating face. A day later, the Duke, accompanied by his butler, went to the temple and requested to take a Saintess candidate. Generally, the Saintess candidates, as property of the temple, could not be taken away. But if it was just a summer candidate, it could be arranged depending on the circumstances. When the Duke said he wanted to adopt Dina, the two temple staff members searched for a while before finding her. A low-born common orphan. They immediately took it upon themselves to offer the Duke other candidates. Just as the Duke was about to lose his temper and deal with them, the butler quickly took out 1 million gold coins and persuaded them. Meanwhile, Dina's wound had already healed due to her divine power. In the past, because of her divine power, she couldn't escape the temple. Now, she could leave so easily. However, the Duke already had 2 sons. She was sure she would be exploited by the nobility, just like before. All she had to do was find a way to die. On the day of her departure, Dina was instructed to obey the Duke's every command and to forget everything about the temple. Hearing this, Dina couldn't help but ask what would happen if the Duke abandoned her. The person listening showed a disgusted expression and stated that Dina no longer belonged to the temple. At that moment, Dina happened to run into Leavian. Upon hearing that Dina was going to be adopted by Duke Dahue, Leavian was stunned. She then grabbed Dina's hand, explaining that she wanted to say a proper goodbye to her. Then Leavian gripped Dina's hand tightly. Why would the Duke take someone like you? Don't you think it's strange that a worthless orphan like you is being adopted by the Duke? But Leavian quickly realized her outburst. She then put on a pitiful expression, explaining that she had spoken out of grief. After witnessing Leavian's ugliness once again, Dina took Leavian's hand and offered a final prayer. Although it sounded like a beautiful blessing, in Dina's heart, it was a hateful curse. Finally, Leavian gently pulled her hands away, thinking about Dina's knowing gaze. Just because Dina was chosen by the goddess and possessed divine power, she was imprisoned in the dungeon, providing power to the false saintess. After countless rebirths, Dina finally escaped the hellish cycle and found someone willing to care for and love her. Just moments ago, Dina had been led to the main gate by the temple staff. She soon saw the butler approaching her. They both naturally bowed to each other. The butler found this a bit awkward. He then explained, "Miss, you're now a member of the Tersia family. And the Tersia family is the only ducal family in the empire. And you are the Duke's only daughter. Your actions represent the honor of our family." After this, the butler invited Dina into the carriage, assuring her that she would get used to things in time. On the way back, she apologized to the Duke. The Duke replied that he was merely keeping his promise. Even so, for Dina, this was much better than dealing with those two-faced people. However, the Duke noticed that Dina was deliberately keeping her distance. He began to consider how to comfort his new daughter. When he offered to buy her some gifts, Dina repeatedly shook her head in refusal. This left the Duke perplexed. Suddenly, he decided he wanted to give Dina a name. Because his deceased wife had told him if they ever had a daughter, she wanted to give her a name that shone like a star. Then, the Duke named the girl Estelle. This name, for you, signifies a new beginning. It also refers to a child who shines like a star. But Dina thought she was unworthy of such a name. Because her whole life had been trapped in darkness, she had never shone. The Duke immediately interrupted her. "You will be the only daughter of the Tersia family, more dazzling than anyone. I will give you everything." Although Dina understood that she would eventually have to give up her old life, this beautiful name was chosen specifically for her. Even if she could only enjoy this happiness briefly, she was happy. After a while, Dina fell asleep in the carriage. The Duke finally had time to take a good look at his daughter. When he saw Dina's dirty and tattered clothes, he clenched his fists in anger, wishing he could immediately return to the temple. He then called the butler and ordered him to turn the carriage around. When Dina woke up, she found herself brought to a luxurious shop. At the entrance, the Duke explained that it was the most luxurious clothing store in the Tersia territory. From now on, she could choose any clothes she wanted. As soon as the shopkeeper saw the Duke arrive, they hurried forward to greet him. The Duke explained that his visit was also impromptu and that he hoped to pick out several outfits for his daughter. Only then did the shopkeeper notice the little girl behind the Duke. They then crouched down, held Dina's hands, and asked her name and age. After hearing her reply, the shopkeeper led Dina to a side room and gave her some clothing catalogs to choose from. Dina seemed a little restless and asked the shopkeeper if she could really stay in such a high-class place. The shopkeeper smiled and said of course she could. Dina then shyly thanked the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper noticed that Dina was just holding the catalog, clearly not used to dealing with these things. They then proactively recommended some clothing styles to Dina. But seeing such high-class clothes, Dina shook her head repeatedly. The shopkeeper mistakenly thought Dina didn't like that style and continued to recommend others. Seeing such luxurious clothes, Dina was overwhelmed. She then opened the catalog herself and chose a few simple, inexpensive outfits. Seeing this, the shopkeeper explained that they understood the young lady's preferred design, but with her delicate features, she would certainly suit many more styles. The shopkeeper then decided to personally help Dina try on some clothes. Looking at the confident shopkeeper, Dina decided to give it a try, even though she knew she would be leaving soon. Meanwhile, the Duke and the butler were waiting in the hall. Just as the Duke was starting to feel like it was taking a while, Dina came out in her new clothes. The Duke was stunned. Seeing Dina's appearance, he felt like he was looking at his wife. He then complimented Dina, saying the clothes suited her very well. Hearing this, Dina shyly said she was just trying them on. But before she could finish, the Duke told the shopkeeper to quickly take his precious daughter to try on other clothes. Everyone was then captivated by Dina's cuteness. Seeing this, the Duke immediately ordered the butler to pack up all the clothes Dina had just tried on. Finally, The Duke looked at the tired Dina and asked if she wanted to pick out a few more. The shopkeeper brought Dina's old clothes and asked the Duke what to do with them. The Duke believed his precious daughter didn't need to wear the temple's rags anymore, so he told them to throw them away. After a while, they finally returned to the Duke's mansion. Dina began to worry about how the Duke's 2 sons would treat her. Dina, having just been adopted, was already being doted on by her father. Any clothes Dina wore were all packed up to be taken home. Even his own sons couldn't bully her. Just now, Dina returned home with her new father. As soon as she entered, she was welcomed by numerous maids and servants. Dina stood there, feeling a little overwhelmed. Just then, Judy and Dennis noticed their father had returned. They quickly noticed Dina. Dina also guessed that these two were the Duke's sons. Suddenly, she noticed Dennis's contemptuous look. Her heart skipped a beat. She understood that, ultimately, she was just an adopted orphan and wouldn't be welcomed by them. The next moment, Judy came up to Dina and looked her over. Her eyes then lit up as she asked her father how he managed to get her sister out. Hearing this, Dennis pinched Judy's cheek and explained that Dina was adopted. The Duke, about to have a headache, was relieved to hear Dennis explain for him and readily agreed. Judy then started pestering Dina with questions. When she heard Dina was from the temple, Judy blurted out that she was picked up from the temple. Hearing such inconsiderate words, Duke Dehue warned Judy, asking if she had too little homework recently. After apologizing, Judy was about to slip away, but the Duke immediately stopped her, telling her to show her sister around the house. Judy immediately refused, suggesting that Dennis was more suitable for such a task. But Dennis had already run off. Under pressure from the Duke, Judy had no choice but to agree. Along the way, Judy was still puzzled by her father's decision, while Dina marveled at the spaciousness of the house. Judy then told Dina she could choose a room for herself on the 3rd floor. Watching Dina carefully selecting a room, Judy thought she looked a bit like their mother. Soon, Dina stopped in front of a room. Seeing Dina choose this room, Judy became somewhat agitated, because this was the room she used to sneak out. But seeing Dina's beautiful and adorable appearance, she agreed, but on the condition that Dina accompany her to meet someone. Judy then extended her hand to make a pinky promise with Dina. After the promise was made, a servant came forward to inform them that the Duke was waiting for Miss Dina. Shortly after, Dina was brought to the dining area. Looking at the desserts she had never seen before, Dina hesitated to try them. Then the Duke took out the adoption papers and handed them to Dina to sign. Looking at the document, Dina wondered if a single signature could really make them a family. The Duke noticed Dina's listlessness, so he picked up a cookie and offered it to her. Dina then realized what these desserts tasted like. Seeing Dina's satisfied expression, the Duke promised his daughter that he would make sure she lived happily every day from now on. The next day, Dina woke up in her bed. She thought to herself how she used to wake up to the sight of a dark cell every day and how she was still not quite used to this. Then a maid came in to call Miss Dina for breakfast. But when she arrived at the dining room, she found that the table was only set for 3. Seeing this, Dina couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. What was she expecting? Suddenly, Dennis walked in and explained that they hadn't set a place for her because they didn't know where she would sit. Dina then realized she was included too. Dennis then ordered a servant to pour Dina a glass of water, explaining that a glass of warm water every morning was good for blood circulation. This gesture surprised Dina. He seemed to dislike her just yesterday. Last night, the Duke had held a family meeting with his 2 children. He warned them to treat their sister well. From now on, they were her family and they had to live together and get along. Dennis looked at Dina with a heavy heart. His father was actually putting so much effort into someone other than him. Just then, the Duke arrived. He was a little hurt when Dina still called him Duke, but he quickly consoled himself that his daughter hadn't opened up to him yet. He then told Dina that the chefs had put a lot of effort into this morning's breakfast. Dina worried that she had never used cutlery before and that she might be disliked because of it. Just then, Dennis began demonstrating how to set and use the cutlery. Dina realized Dennis was showing her what to do. Dina then imitated Dennis and picked up her knife and fork. Watching Dennis's actions, the Duke felt reassured about him. After breakfast, Dina learned that Judy had invited her somewhere. It was about the promise from yesterday. Judy would be waiting for her in the garden at 2:30. Later, the maid prepared a lunchbox for Dina. The 2 of them went to the garden together. Seeing that the time was almost up, they sat down on the chairs to wait. Because Dina had never experienced anything like this at the temple, she was looking forward to it. But soon it grew dark and Judy still hadn't arrived. The maid was hesitant about whether or not to advise Dina to go back. After all, it wasn't the first or second time Judy had stood someone up. But Dina smiled and said she would continue to wait, because Judy had said she would come, and this was Dinah's first date. Seeing how understanding Dinah was, the maid was touched. Then a chubby boy walked over, muttering about how Judy had gotten his sister so quickly. Dinah had just been adopted by the Duke's family and had already been stood up by her brother. A little while ago, Judy had invited Dinah to meet in the garden, but Dinah waited a long time and didn't see Judy. Instead, she saw a chubby boy. As soon as the chubby boy saw Dinah, he knew this was the new sister Judy had mentioned. He then grabbed Dinah's arm, muttering about how they had picked such a person to be their sister. The girl, startled by the sudden force, hadn't regained her balance when she heard the chubby boy asking about her price again. He then arrogantly declared he would pay double, instantly reminding the girl of her past experiences of being traded like an object at the temple. At that moment, the maid beside her, unable to dissuade the chubby boy, could only invoke the Duke's name as a deterrent. Hearing this, the chubby boy stopped pestering her. He looked at the quiet girl and bluntly said, "A silly girl like you can't compare to my sister. And if you tell the Duke about this, I won't let you off." After saying this, the chubby boy left. Before the maid could comfort her, the girl had already sat down on a chair, hugging her knees. The girl knew she had always been afraid of nobles, but in this situation, she was so frightened she couldn't utter a word. Soon, she noticed a small dog appear in front of her. Stroking the cute puppy, the girl felt some comfort for her distress. The maid was still worriedly asking if she wanted to go back and rest, but the girl wanted to stay with the puppy a little longer. Meanwhile, Judy had just left the auction house. She then asked her attendant what time it was. She thought Dinah should have gone back long ago. She figured she just needed to apologize to Dinah and everything would be fine. But on her way home, she passed by the park and saw Dinah. Seeing her sister waiting there foolishly for so long, she angrily yelled at Dinah, "It's almost evening. Why are you still here?" Suddenly, she realized she shouldn't be so angry. Dinah then explained that she liked it there, and that's why she stayed so long. After saying this, Dinah leaned against Judy. Seeing how tired Dinah looked, Judy bent down to carry her home on her back. Although Dinah insisted she still had energy, Judy still carried her. On the way, Dinah demurely asked Judy if she was heavy. Judy turned her head and told Dinah not to call her miss anymore. "We're family now." Hearing this, Dinah shyly buried her head. "Okay, Judy, sister." Judy then apologized for being late, promising she would never forget their appointments again and asked Dinah not to wait so foolishly in the future. "If anyone makes you wait, I'll make sure they regret it." Listening to these comforting words, Dinah fell asleep without realizing it. It was evening by the time the two of them finally got home. Dennis, watching everything from the window, decided to prioritize his promise to Ace. Dinah merely fell ill, and yet she begged the Duke to kill her. Earlier, Dinah had been carried home by Judy. After returning home, Dinah slept for 2 whole days. Everyone thought she was seriously ill. In her dream, Dinah saw a boy. He gently checked Dinah's temperature. After confirming she didn't have a fever, he held Dinah's hands and wished her not to get sick again. "If you get sick, my heart will ache too." Then Dinah woke up. She noticed the Duke and Judy were by her bedside, not the unfamiliar boy. Confused as to why everyone was in her room, Judy explained that Dinah had developed a fever upon returning home and hadn't woken up for 2 days. Dinah unconsciously clutched the blanket. She began to suspect that the time for her Saintess awakening had come. Seeing Dinah's fear, the Duke gently stroked her head. "Have you always been this frail?" At this moment, Dinah noticed Judy's expression was a little unnatural. Then she received a rabbit doll from Judy. Judy, acting Sundara, explained that she only brought it because the rabbit looked like Dinah. After Judy left, Dinah absent-mindedly squeezed the doll. She was certain that her Saintess awakening had come early, but she didn't know how this was related to her current rebirth. Who was the boy who comforted her in her dream? Why hadn't she seen him in all her previous reincarnations? Thinking of this, Dinah hugged the doll tightly. After a while, a maid brought a group of people to Dinah's room. This group of people were all doctors the Duke had called to examine her. After being examined by some of them, Dinah was so exhausted that her body was trembling. The Duke, having just finished his work, came to check on her. Seeing that Dinah was even weaker than before, he began to reprimand the doctors. Seeing this, the doctors could only say they would examine her again. Dinah nervously glanced at the doctor, then suddenly jolted. The doctor was looking at her with an icy stare. Noticing Dinah's gaze, the doctor turned to the Duke and explained that Dinah was physically fine and just needed some rest. However, the girl was still trembling. She recalled the looks she often received at the temple, looks that made her feel like something incredibly dirty. Thinking of this, Dinah couldn't help but apologize to the Duke. Upon hearing this, the Duke sat beside her and told her that being sick wasn't something to apologize for. "Although I don't know what you've been through," he said, "as your family, we just want to make sure you're safe. There's nothing to be sorry for." These words dispelled the anxieties of her past memories, bringing Dinah back to the warmth of the present. That night, heavy rain began to fall outside. The Duke looked out the window, his heart filled with worry for Dinah. He knew she was easily frightened. Just as he was about to instruct the butler to check on her, Dinah's maid rushed in, her face etched with worry. The Duke hurried to Dinah's room and found her huddled on the floor, wrapped in a blanket. She turned her head, trembling all over. As the Duke moved to comfort her, he heard her plead, "Please, kill me. I'm afraid to breathe, afraid to live. Please, I beg you, take me away." The Duke finally realized that his daughter had been abused. He ordered the butler to investigate and ensure those responsible paid a heavy price. Just moments ago, he had rushed to Dinah's room only to find her kneeling on the floor, begging him to kill her. It was all because of the past. Whenever it thundered and rained, Leavian would torment and abuse Dina, claiming it was because she was in a bad mood. Dina trembled, begging Leavian to stop. The Duke kept calling her name, finally bringing her back to her senses. Looking at his terrified daughter, he asked if she knew where she was. He frowned when she mistakenly thought she was at the temple. He reassured her that she was at the Duke's mansion. Dina, still trembling, apologized for the commotion, inadvertently revealing that she had been locked up in the temple and abused by Leavian. Although she quickly corrected herself, claiming it was just a nightmare, the Duke caught the name Leavian. Recalling his daughter's fear, he wasn't about to let it go. He gently lifted Dina into his arms and promised to stay with her. He carried her to bed and asked if she had been bullied at the temple. He wasn't surprised when she denied it. He simply asked again when she had become afraid of thunder. When she still wouldn't confess, he gently placed his hand on hers. "I won't let anyone bully my daughter," he said. "So, from now on, you can feel completely safe in our home." Just then, Judy arrived with a pillow, explaining cheerfully that she was worried about Dina being scared of the thunder and had come to stay with her. She walked over to the bed, placed her pillow down, and lay down. "I'll protect you," she said. The Duke was relieved to see this harmonious scene. Judy, settled in bed, noticed her father hadn't left yet and asked if he was planning to sleep there too. After a while, Dina was still awake. The Duke reassured her, "I won't leave just because you've fallen asleep." Once Dina was asleep, the Duke called for the butler. He instructed him to investigate whether Dina had been mistreated at the temple, paying particular attention to a saintess candidate named Leavian. The butler reminded the Duke that Leavian was the daughter of Duke Browns. But the Duke insisted that regardless of whose daughter she was, if his child had been abused, there would be consequences. The next day, Dina woke up and found that Judy and the Duke had stayed with her all night. This image of her family warmed her heart. Later, she ran into Dennis. After exchanging greetings, Dennis invited her for a walk in the garden. Dina, though surprised, agreed. As she began to wonder if they were even going towards the garden, Dennis apologized, admitting he hadn't actually intended to go to the garden. He explained that he had brought her out to avoid the prying eyes of the household. He then confessed that he didn't accept her as his sister. He wasn't as naive as Judy. Dina, showered with affection by Judy and the Duke, had unknowingly aroused Dennis's suspicion. On the night of the storm, Dennis had seen Judy go to Dina's room in the middle of the night. Knowing that his brother had accepted their adopted sister, and hearing Judy and their father's words, Dennis couldn't help but feel curious. Was this sister truly that special? He had to understand what kind of person she was. That day, Dennis brought Dina to a hole. Looking at the dog door, Dina was puzzled. "You don't acknowledge me as your sister, so what does this dog door have to do with anything?" The next moment, she heard Dennis say they both needed to crawl through it. He explained that he needed to go to the village for something, but couldn't be seen. Dina struggled to crawl out of the hole, only to find Dennis standing right there, staring intently at her. "You actually crawled through." Dina was speechless. "Didn't you tell me to come with you?" They stared at each other for a moment before Dennis finally looked away. "Let's go. We have a lot of places to visit today." They arrived at a bustling market. Dina was captivated by the lively scene. Meanwhile, Dennis was pondering what his father saw in her. Suddenly, he announced he needed to go somewhere and refused Dina's request to accompany him. He pointed to a spot, instructing her to wait there for his return. After hesitating, Dina agreed. She obediently stood in place. Watching Dennis disappear into the crowd, the sky gradually darkened. Looking into the distance, Dina thought, he abandoned me after all. She had suspected this might happen when he invited her out, but it didn't matter. It was all a pretense anyway. She was bound to leave this fake family sooner or later. Despite this, Dina couldn't help but feel a tinge of regret. Just then, she noticed two men approaching her. Judging by their appearance, Dina knew they weren't good people, so she spoke first, asking them to kill her. The men were taken aback. Dina explained that kidnapping her was pointless. She had been abandoned, so it was best to just kill her right there. Just then, Dennis returned. He calmly explained that things had taken longer than expected, which was why he was late. The two men were amused by the child's composure in the face of danger. Seeing their lack of awareness, Dennis asked, "Don't you know who I am?" They finally recognized the arrogant boy as the Duke's son. While they weren't good people, they wouldn't dare provoke the Tersia family, so they promptly left. Seeing them truly give up, Dina breathed a sigh of relief. The next moment, Dennis turned and demanded to know what she was thinking. He then confessed that he had deliberately left her there. He was curious if leaving her alone would reveal her true nature. Dina now understood that she wasn't truly hated, and she saw Dennis looking at her seriously. "I won't test you or abandon you again, so don't talk about wanting to die anymore." Hearing this, Dina felt a subtle shift within her. She was someone who felt guilty just for being alive. Why did this family care so much about her? The next day at dinner, the Duke subtly prompted Dennis to speak. Dennis frankly admitted his mistake. The Duke was quite satisfied with Dennis's apologetic attitude. He then reiterated to everyone that Dina was their sister, a member of the family. From now on, they should all get along well. Then the Duke remembered that the brothers' birthdays were approaching, so he needed to ask for their opinions. Hearing this, both Judy and Dennis began to share their ideas. Seeing the brothers arguing, Dina didn't have a chance to speak. The Duke noticed this, so he proposed doing something special at their birthday party, introducing Dina to everyone. Seeing Dina's startled and confused expression, the Duke explained that the birthday party would be the perfect opportunity since everyone would be gathered there. Dina was still hesitant. After all, she just wanted to disappear quietly. Then she heard the Duke say he would find her an etiquette tutor. Seeing the Duke's overflowing affection, Dina could only agree. After dinner, the butler had already prepared resumes of potential tutors. Although they were all top graduates, the most qualified tutor already had another student. To this, the Duke simply said, then offer them triple the salary to switch. The butler then reported that another matter had been investigated. Hearing this, the Duke immediately put down what he was doing. According to the investigation, there were no incidents of imprisonment or abuse of Saintess candidates in the temple. And Leavian is indeed the daughter of Duke Browns. And before entering the temple, Leavian had already been chosen as the next Saintess and was receiving education. It seems unlikely that such a person would secretly abuse anyone in the temple. The Duke also understood. Although there was no clear evidence, his daughter's despairing expression was the best evidence for him. Dina's words were surprisingly praised by everyone. The Duke even framed her words, preparing to display them for all to see. He declared that Dina's paintings had surpassed the Empire's most famous painter. But Dina felt self-conscious about her paintings. In the past, at the temple, her paintings were scorned by everyone. They were even called the level a 3-year-old could achieve. That day, Dina discovered many painting tools in her room. Enthusiastic about painting, she immediately began to create. At this time, a maid nearby noticed Dina's actions. She tremblingly accepted Dina's painting, not only because of its beauty, but also because the portrait on it was of herself. Dina smiled and said it was a gift for the maid. Upon hearing this, the maid happily praised Dina's artistic talent. Just as she was about to report this to the Duke, Dennis, outside the door, heard the commotion and walked in. After understanding what had happened, Dennis also asked Dina to paint a picture for him. But Dina simply excused herself, saying her paintings were particularly ugly. Hearing this, the maid anxiously urged Dina to have confidence in herself. After Dennis requested again, Dina shyly agreed. While Dina was painting, Dennis observed his sister out of the corner of his eye. Watching his sister's focused expression, he couldn't help but find it amusing. Suddenly, he noticed a golden light flashing in his sister's eyes. This sight stunned Dennis, but the next moment, Dina announced that she had finished. Dina was a little apprehensive that Dennis would be disappointed in her. Then she heard Dennis call her name. He excitedly held the painting in his hands and asked Dina why she hadn't told everyone about her talent. After hearing that Dina had never even studied painting, Dennis patted his sister's head and sincerely praised her, saying, "You're really amazing." Then, Dennis excitedly ran out with the painting. Dina finally understood that she also had something she excelled at. She began to look forward to being praised by others. Meanwhile, the Duke had just finished military training. He was complaining to the old butler that the soldiers had become very lax recently, and none of them were reliable. Then he asked about the whereabouts of his wife and daughter. He learned that his daughter was painting in the courtyard. The Duke thought for 0.1 seconds, then went directly to the courtyard. Dina was sitting in the pavilion painting. Engrossed, she didn't notice the Duke approaching. Finally, she finished the painting in her hand. As she was preparing to think about the content of the next painting, she noticed the Duke sitting beside her, smiling. Then the Duke asked Dina if she could paint one for him as well. Seeing Dina's flattered expression, the Duke reassured her that it didn't matter how the painting turned out. He then put on a sad expression, saying, "If I'm rejected like this, I'll just have to find someone else." However, in reality, the Duke had just recently rejected other people's requests for portraits. But Dina, at this moment, was completely charmed by the Duke. Seeing his daughter agree, the Duke's lips curled into a smile. At this time, the secretary ran over anxiously to report to the Duke. The butler explained that Dina was painting a portrait for the Duke. The secretary was speechless upon hearing this. Hadn't the Duke just rejected other people's requests? Unexpectedly, the Duke overheard the secretary's muttering and gave him a warning glare. Then the Duke gently asked his daughter if she wanted to learn how to paint. Not just painting, he said, anything you're interested in. After thanking the Duke, Dina said that her painting was finished. The Duke took his daughter's painting and was startled. He then called the secretary over to take a look. Although the secretary and the butler had already anticipated it, the quality of this painting still exceeded their expectations. The Duke immediately decided to display this painting at the upcoming harvest banquet. He then instructed the butler to hang the painting in his frame. The butler explained that the frame had already been taken by Dennis. The Duke wasn't angry. He simply instructed them to prepare a bigger and more ornate one for Dina. Watching the delighted Duke, it was unexpected to see this side of him. What he didn't expect even more was how the Duke would show off his daughter at the banquet. Everyone praised the painting lavishly. Only one person wore a grave expression. At the banquet that night, the Duke watched the nobles engage in their tedious business and mutual flattery with boredom. Suddenly, he challenged them, inquiring about the results of the recent military training. Hearing this, the atmosphere immediately shifted, and they began to flatter the Duke's leadership. The Duke let out a cold laugh. He then followed up with a blunt question, "Do you truly think so?" Everyone fell silent. At this moment, the secretary stepped forward and informed the Duke that everything was prepared. Then, a large display was wheeled in. Listening to the murmurs of the crowd, the Duke didn't keep them in suspense and stood up. He then pulled off the white cloth covering the display, revealing his portrait. Seeing the delicate style of the portrait, everyone began to speculate about the artist. Among them, the clergyman sensed the divine. Moreover, the power within the painting was beyond what the high priest could achieve. Only a true saintess could reach such a level. Then, the Duke announced to everyone that the artist was his daughter. He further stated that he would soon hold a banquet. He expected everyone present to attend. Hearing this, the man's expression turned grave. The daughter of the Tersia family, someone outside the temple, possessed such powerful divinity. Later, while the Duke was resting on the balcony, the man approached him. The man's name was Benjamin. He had once fought alongside the Duke on the battlefield. Seeing Benjamin's troubled expression, the Duke encouraged him to speak freely, promising to grant any request. Benjamin explained that he had seen the portrait at the banquet and wanted to request the young lady to paint a portrait of Noah as well. Noah, the young master he served, had been suffering from illness for many years. He hoped to have a portrait of him while he was still alive. The Duke listened to the request calmly. Although he was moved by Benjamin's loyalty, he stated that he couldn't make the decision for his daughter. Moreover, he felt inexplicably worried. Elsewhere, Dina noticed the hyacinths blooming in her room. The maid beside her continuously complimented Dina on her gardening skills, but Dina couldn't feel any joy. Because hyacinths are plants highly sensitive to divine power, and these hyacinth seeds were brought in from outside just a few days ago. Such rapid growth meant that she was about to fully awaken. If others discovered she possessed the power of the saintess, she would be confined to the temple again. And in the temple, Leavian had already been nominated as the next saintess. Under the gaze of others, she displayed a holy aura. The next moment, she arrived at the current saintess's door. She explained to the temple guard that she had medicine for the saintess. Seeing this, the temple guard began to flatter Leavian, leaving her speechless. He then handed Leavian a vial. The two exchanged a knowing glance. After entering the room, Leavian saw the emaciated saintess. She explained that she had come to deliver medicine. Then, she sat obediently by the bedside, inquiring about the saintess's condition. The saintess simply replied that she had resigned herself to fate. Leavian urged the saintess to stay strong, saying that neither she nor the temple wanted her to leave. The saintess simply offered a faint smile to the weeping Leavian. After the performance, Leavian began to prepare the medicine for the saintess. This medicine was specifically sent by her father to help her. The purpose was to ensure the saintess could return to the goddess's side as soon as possible. Leavian smiled as she handed the prepared medicine to the saintess. "You must drink it all today." At this moment, Dina was asking the maid for more hyacinth seeds. She recalled her past life. The correct awakening time should be in 6 months. Since hyacinths were most sensitive to divine power, she only needed to test the influence of her own power on the seeds. In the past, she was scolded daily in the temple for being unable to make the hyacinths bloom. Thinking of this, Dina couldn't help but worry again. However, when Dina arrived in the courtyard, all the hyacinths were in bloom. This sight also baffled everyone in the courtyard. It wasn't even hyacinth season, yet they had all bloomed. Dina hid behind a tree, observing. She hadn't expected her divine power to have reached this level. At this rate, she would fully awaken as the saintess much sooner than 6 months. Just as Dina didn't know what to do, the Duke appeared behind her. He stroked his daughter's forehead and asked what had happened. Those who want to read the rest of the novel can download Xuanlei and search for True Saintess. You can read the rest of the novel there. I will also continue to update the comic. The first thing the boy did after waking up from his coma was to find himself a wife. Not long ago, Dina discovered in the courtyard that her divine power was about to fully awaken, just as she was unsure what to do next. The Duke appeared behind her and asked her what was wrong. Looking at his dazed daughter, the Duke brushed aside her hair and discovered a red mark on her forehead. This annoyed the Duke. His daughter had been injured somewhere he couldn't see. Maybe he should cut down that damn tree. Suddenly, the Duke noticed the blooming ceiling blossom in the courtyard. Seeing this, Dina desperately tried to explain to the Duke. But before she could come up with a plausible excuse, the Duke told her he had something to discuss. They then went to a pavilion. The Duke got straight to the point and asked Dina if she had possessed such outstanding divine power back at the temple. Perhaps he had already guessed Dina's identity. Afterward, he casually mentioned the ceiling blossom in the courtyard, startling Dina so much she almost lost her human form. Dina could only fidget with her fingers to alleviate the awkwardness. The Duke stopped teasing her and told her he had a favor to ask. But as he mentioned needing her to go out and paint a portrait, he realized it was a very dangerous undertaking. Not only was Noah's location a sanctuary, but if anything went wrong, they could be punished by the Empire. So the Duke decided to refuse on Dina's behalf. But Dina said she would go, as she felt needed by others. Understanding his daughter's determination, the Duke stroked her head and told her not to worry about the danger. Just as he was about to leave, Dina asked the Duke if anything had happened at the temple. Although the Duke explained he hadn't received any news, Dina remained vigilant. After all, her growing divine power was connected to the Saintess's safety. After a while, Dina boarded a carriage. Upon arriving at her destination, she was told she only had 2 hours. Entering the house, Dina noticed that the place was a sanctuary. All of the Empire's sacred jade should be managed by the temple. This secluded sacred jade might have escaped the temple's control. Suddenly, Dina felt a chill emanating from the room. Without thinking, she pushed open the door and noticed someone lying in bed. As she approached, she realized she seemed to have seen this boy somewhere before. But she quickly stopped her wandering thoughts, as she only had 2 short hours. However, for the portrait, she inevitably needed to observe the boy's features. She found him more handsome than anyone she had ever met. Although the Duke's family was also handsome, only Leavian could compare to him. Looking at the gradually completed outline on the canvas, Dina realized it would be difficult to continue painting his face as his eyes remained closed. Suddenly, she noticed his hand resting outside the covers. Dina sat on the boy's bed and held his hand. She thought that he must be very lonely sleeping here alone, just like she had felt when locked in the temple dungeon. Then, Dina shared her divine power with the boy. Only after doing so did she realize she had done something foolish. But as she tried to let go, the boy suddenly gripped her hand. This startled Dina. The boy then asked her what she was doing. But when he saw Dina, he suddenly became agitated. Dina could only apologize profusely, explaining she was there to paint his portrait. But the boy only asked for her name. After she told him, he repeatedly confirmed that she was truly Dina. Relieved, he smiled. Dina, puzzled by the expression on his face, asked if he could let go of her hand. The boy then realized he had been holding Dina's hand, but instead of letting go, he gripped it tighter with both hands. Then, with a love-struck expression, he asked if she had come specifically to paint him. Upon learning she had to leave soon, he became upset. Seeing this, Dina explained she needed to finish the painting within 2 hours and then return. However, to her surprise, the boy demanded she not finish it today. He then closed his eyes and leaned towards her, murmuring, "Let's do the eyes next time." The goddess finally delivered a revelation to the Saintess, announcing the chosen successor. Leavian then understood that the position of Saintess was destined for another. Just a moment ago, Dina had been commissioned to paint a portrait of Noah at the Holy Jade. However, to her surprise, Noah was a sleeping beauty who had been bedridden for years, and he had awakened because of her arrival. Furthermore, he refused to let her leave. Dina had no choice but to explain she only had 2 hours. But Noah wouldn't agree, closing his eyes and asking her to return tomorrow to paint them. With such a handsome man holding her hand and pleading with her, Dina, as if under a spell, nodded in agreement. Noah, understanding her predicament, reassured her that he would arrange things. Although Dina still hesitated, Noah was already confident of his victory. He then feigned illness and discomfort to make her worry. He then took her hand and placed it on his face, explaining he suffered from an ailment curable only by a Saintess's ribbon. Although Dina was skeptical, she accepted his explanation. She thought that perhaps the boy had lived alone here since childhood and was lonely, so she promised Noah she would return tomorrow. Noah knew it was her kindness that made her agree. He then told her this was a hidden sanctuary. He expressed his joy at seeing his saintess here. Watching Noah's behavior, Dina guessed he might have known her before. But why didn't she have any memory of him, despite having been reborn so many times? Lost in thought, Noah leaned closer, affectionately asking what she was thinking. He then took her hand again. This series of actions completely captivated Dina, who had been single for 14 lifetimes. Blushing, she said she had to go, so they said their goodbyes. On her way back, Dina's mind was filled with Noah's face. He seemed mysterious, special, and lonely. At 10 p.m., Leavian, as usual, prepared to give the saintess her medicine. Upon opening the door, she found the saintess standing in a beam of holy light. The scene stunned Leavian. She had increased the dosage. The saintess should have been bedridden. The next moment, she heard the saintess say the goddess had delivered a revelation. Feigning concern, Leavian approached her. The saintess who will save the empire from disaster is a child of the lowest birth, yet possesses the noblest status. She has grayish-brown hair and pink eyes. Leavian knew this description definitely didn't fit her. The saintess, now lucid, immediately claimed her previous words were nonsense. But Leavian didn't accept this explanation. The saintess declared that the bloodline of the Duke of Browns was the sole candidate for the next saintess. She then looked at Leavian with her golden hair and blood-red eyes. She didn't understand this outcome. All Leavian could think about was who this person with grayish-brown hair could be. Leavian, having received the saintess's revelation, learned the next saintess was someone else. But she remained skeptical, because the goddess had made a pact with the empire. Every 3 generations, the Browns family would produce a saintess. And since birth, she had been designated as the next one. Her father had even told her not to consider any life other than that of a saintess. Faced with his high expectations, Leavian knew that becoming the saintess was her only future. To please her father, she had always strived for this goal. Leavian could only convince herself the saintess was senile. After leaving the saintess's room, she regained her usual composure. Suddenly, she encountered a family member who brought gifts and a letter from her mother. This pleased her. However, upon learning the Duke would personally visit the temple soon, Leavian's expression returned to its usual calmness. She then inquired about her fiancé. The family member awkwardly explained he was still asleep and hadn't replied. This answer made Leavian lose her patience completely. After all, 3 whole months had passed, and her fiancé's illness could only be cured by the high priest of the temple. Such a prolonged slumber indicated a deteriorating relationship between the royal family and the temple. The high priest might even be prepared to give up on him. Leavian was determined to prevent this. Leavian immediately instructed her attendants to prepare for her departure. Although they guessed her intentions, they couldn't dissuade her. She told them to keep the matter secret from the Duke, as she intended to leave discreetly. She had to see Noah. Meanwhile, in the sanctuary, Noah felt his health significantly improve. No matter how the priests used their divine powers, they had never been able to restore him to this extent. Thinking of Dina's shy and adorable demeanor, Noah clenched his hands, praying to see her again soon. Just then, Benjamin opened the door and entered. Seeing Noah sitting on the bed and greeting him, he hurriedly knelt, inquiring about Noah's health. Noah smiled, explaining that after 3 months of sleep, any ailment would be cured. He then asked Benjamin if he had summoned Dina. Benjamin now understood what had transpired. His suspicions had been correct. Only Dina's divine power could save Noah. However, the prospect of keeping Dina there presented a dilemma. Noah also understood the difficulty. He had learned from his dreams that Dina was now the Duke of Tersia's daughter. Considering the Duke's forceful personality, he decided to plan carefully. At that moment, Benjamin informed Noah that Leavian had sent a message. Leavian would soon be visiting Noah in person. Given the circumstances, Noah instructed Benjamin to arrange another visit from Dina as soon as possible. Thinking about his relationship with Leavian, Noah knew he had to end their ill-fated connection. The Empire's most noble princess was fixated on a man who slept 48 hours a day. A mere 2 hours in his company had captivated this girl, who hadn't experienced love in 14 lifetimes. Although he didn't even know her name, she was already anticipating their next meeting. That day, the Duke and his secretary were discussing the tutor they had hired for Dina. This top graduate had performed exceptionally well on the written exam and would be visiting in 2 days. The Duke then noticed Dina in the room and approached her to share the news. Seeing her puzzled expression, the Duke patiently explained that he had mentioned finding her a tutor and that this young man had graduated at the top of his class. She would undoubtedly learn a great deal. Dina's heart warmed. No one had ever been so willing to do so much for her. Viewers are welcome to share 100 ways to love yourself in the comment section. She then thanked the Duke and promised to study diligently. Dennis also learned of the arrangement and joined everyone in anticipating the tutor's arrival. Unexpectedly, the Duke was the most nervous of all. Dennis then expressed his desire to join the lessons. Glancing at Dina as he spoke, the Duke hadn't anticipated this. As Dennis had previously claimed, he could only concentrate when studying alone. Soon, the tutor's carriage arrived at the mansion. It was James, the top graduate. The Duke warmly welcomed him into the living room. At the Duke's prompting, the two children introduced themselves to James. James then smiled at Dina and stated that he preferred to begin the lesson immediately, postponing any further introductions. The Duke, pleased with the tutor's efficiency, readily agreed. They followed a maid to the study. Suddenly, James paused and posed a presumptuous question. Would your grace also be attending the lesson? The Duke, however, wore an expression that made refusal impossible. Seeing his father's permission granted, Dennis naturally received the same. James then commenced the lesson. The Duke and his secretary observed from the back, noticing the amicable interaction between Dennis and Dina. A satisfied smile spread across the Duke's face. Dina was clearly enjoying the lesson. Although James's lecture on imperial history and the legends of the goddess was material she had already studied in the temple. When James finished the lesson, he noticed both children wore expressions of wanting more. He politely asked if he should continue for a bit longer. Dina, curious as ever, began to anticipate the next part of the lesson. After receiving the Duke's permission, James continued his lecture. At that moment, Judy returned from sword training at the academy. After learning that everyone at home was safe, Judy's expression turned fierce. Now I'm going to collect a debt, she declared. It turned out that after the chubby boy bullied Dina that day, the maid had reported it to Judy. Although Judy knew she was also largely at fault, she wouldn't let the person who called her sister a beggar off the hook. She went to the place where the chubby boy usually hung out. Soon, his lackeys surrounded Judy. The next moment, the lackeys heard Judy's cold voice. Where's that Sebastian fellow now? However, the chubby boy, Sebastian, had already run off to the countryside. He was feeling quite uneasy because when he received Judy's request to visit, he already knew her intentions. The next moment, Judy's voice rang out from the doorway. Sebastian, you're here, aren't you? Seeing that the chubby boy was indeed there, Judy gave a sinister smile. She threw one of the lackeys she was holding to the ground and walked toward Sebastian. Even though Sebastian knelt down and apologized, he still couldn't avoid a beating from Judy. Then Judy sat down and asked Sebastian why he hadn't hidden at home. I know all about what you did to my sister. Are you tired of living? However, Sebastian, for some reason, felt that Judy had made him lose face in front of his lackeys. He yelled at Judy, "What did I say wrong? She's a beggar. She's not your sister." Judy flew into a rage and gave Sebastian another beating. "If you ever say that about my sister again, it won't be this simple." Then Judy crouched down and reasoned with Sebastian. "Does that hurt? The pain my sister felt from your words hurt even more than this." Thinking about this, Judy started to blame herself for standing Dina up that day. Because of Sebastian's insults, Dina had secretly been heartbroken for a long time. If I hadn't called Sebastian over, maybe my sister wouldn't have gotten sick afterwards. Afterwards, Judy ordered Sebastian to go to their house and apologize to Dina. Sebastian was about to object, but seeing Judy getting ready to hit him again, he could only agree. After finishing this, Judy couldn't wait to go home and see her sister. At this time, Dina was doing the homework James had assigned. For some reason, she remembered the portrait painting she was helping with. She couldn't help but wonder if she could go back tomorrow. The boy had promised to make arrangements for her. She was really looking forward to seeing him again. Thinking of the boy's expression of reliance on her, Dina started daydreaming again. Suddenly, she heard a scream from the courtyard. A man was sitting on the ground, clutching his foot and wailing. It was unclear if he had a severe case of athlete's foot, but Dina, hiding behind a tree, realized the man had been bitten by a venomous snake. She immediately spotted the white snake hidden in the flower bed. However, to her surprise, the white snake seemed to be staring back at her. To save those around her, the girl had used her divine power countless times to heal others. But each time, she was met with alienation and disgust. Now, the girl had been reborn 14 times. She immediately recognized that the man had been bitten by a venomous snake. But the girl hesitated about whether or not to step forward. Suddenly, hurried footsteps sounded from behind her. Bayun, the girl's maid, anxiously urged her to get inside and avoid being bitten by the snake. But the girl wasn't worried. She could sense that the white snake had only attacked to protect its unborn children. And she also believed she could communicate with the snake. So the girl decided to intervene once more. When she appeared before everyone, they all worried for her safety and told her to stay back. And this was the reason the girl decided to reveal her power. These workers were always kind to her. They would bring her flowers and check on her, or secretly use their free time to make her sweets. Perhaps they would fear her peculiarity in the future, but right now, these people were like family to her. So the girl resolutely approached the white snake. She expressed her understanding of the snake's protective behavior. She also promised that no one here would harm it, and the white snake willingly crawled towards the girl, rested his head on Dina's hand. Seeing this, Dina asked the surrounding people for a basket. The white snake cooperated, coiling its entire body inside the basket. Seeing the previously ferocious white snake now docile as a little rabbit, the surrounding people became agitated. Dina then turned her gaze towards the injured man. Although he feared being ostracized again, he decided to use his divine power to heal the wound. Under Dina's power, the snake venom was quickly neutralized. She also cured the man's 82-year-old athlete's foot. After completing the treatment, Dina lifted her head. The noisy commotion and the stares, as if she were a monster, pulled Dina back to reality. Although she had long anticipated this reaction, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. In the end, she hurriedly fled the scene. However, Dina's departure only intensified the crowd's commotion. The healed man, unable to stand it, spoke up, "I owe my life to the young lady." Meanwhile, Dina could only think about what had just happened. Now everyone would be afraid of her. It was a shame she wouldn't be able to eat their pastries anymore. Seeing Dina's sadness, the white snake nuzzled its head against her face to comfort her. At the same time, Dennis witnessed the entire incident from a window. Having witnessed his sister's ability to cure snake venom, he went to the study to search for books containing relevant information. Finally, he found a book about the Saintis. Due to their prominent divinity, Saintesses can communicate with almost any animal. The Saintess's divine power is something no person or force can bestow. And because of the healing abilities granted by this divine power, the Saintess is hailed as the savior of the Empire. Dennis also found a way to verify the identity of a Saintess in the book, through the widespread blooming of hyacinths, or by the eyes turning gold when using divine power. Recalling his sister's appearance when she was painting him, Dennis believed his sister was the Saintess. He began to wonder if his father had known this all along, which was why he adopted her. However, the current Saintess in the temple was still alive. There had never been a precedent of two Saintesses existing simultaneously in the Empire. This puzzled Dennis, but the temple definitely didn't know about his sister being the Saintess yet. Otherwise, his father wouldn't have been able to adopt Dina. If the temple found out, his sister would most likely be taken away. Dennis would absolutely not allow such a thing to happen, because Dina was his family. Dina returned to her room. She warned the white snake not to bite anyone. The white snake wagged its tail like a puppy, indicating its obedience. The maid, however, was worried about Dina's safety. Dina reassured her. "All right, miss, how are you going to explain this to the Duke?" Upon hearing this, Dina began to ponder. The white snake crawled out of the basket. It slithered up Dina's arm and rested its head against her face, telling her it didn't want to leave. So, Dina decided to name the white snake Xiaobai. The snake seemed very pleased with the name. Suddenly, a light emanated from Dina's hand. This was the mark symbolizing the Saintess. It had first appeared a few days ago when she woke up from fainting, and now it was becoming increasingly prominent. Xiaobai showed concern for Dina. Perhaps because of the earlier healing, Dina felt a little sleepy. When a maid finished her work and returned to check on Dina, she found Dina and Xiaobai sleeping peacefully together. That evening in the sanctuary, Noah sat by the bedside. "You're later than expected. What can I do? I have many plans to attend to. I can only leave at specific times." The visitor was Leavian. As she approached Noah, he realized, "You're awake. No one should have healed you. I am the prince of the Empire, after all. But you, a mere junior Saintess candidate, have so many plans to tend to." "What nonsense are you talking about, Noah? I'm not a candidate. I am the next Saintess. And your fiancé, Prince Noah." The false Saintess finally arrived at her fiancé's residence. And only then did she realize that what she considered hers didn't belong to her at all. Leavian still believed she was the only Saintess candidate, and also the fiancé of Prince Noah of the Austin Empire, because this was a well-known secret among the Empire's elite. Every 3 generations, a daughter of the Browns family was destined to become the Saintess. Hearing Noah's acknowledgement, Leavian laughed. "I thought you'd forgotten while you were sleeping." She had received all the education of a Saintess since childhood. Her father had always demanded she uphold the Saintess's responsibilities and obligations. So she always firmly believed that only she could be the Saintess. No one was more suited for the position than her. Noah didn't argue. He knew Leavian had put in a lot of effort for the sake of becoming the saintess. It was also because of her constant striving that their engagement came about. But Noah still offered a word of caution. Insatiable greed would ultimately bring disaster upon oneself. If you continue to covet things that don't belong to you, you will eventually regret it. Leavian frowned, not understanding the meaning of Noah's words. Think about it yourself. Is there anything you've been greedy for? Leavian believed that such a thing was impossible. What could there possibly be that won't be mine in the future? As the future saintess, there's nothing I can't have. Noah looked at Leavian. Is this your choice? At this moment, Leavian suddenly realized that the atmosphere of the conversation wasn't what she had hoped for. Just as she was about to try and win Noah back, a cold voice startled her. Didn't Duke Browns break off our engagement when I was ill? Leavian could only awkwardly explain that it wasn't her intention. Noah chuckled. It's already been broken off. Do you think it will change just because of your intention? Leavian's face completely darkened, but Noah was relentless. No matter what, I am a prince of this country. I should have a right to choose, shouldn't I? Seeing Noah's indifferent attitude, Leavian was puzzled. She didn't understand why Noah was so self-assured, so she reminded him of his illness, which only she, the saintess, could cure. Noah turned his head and said to Leavian meaningfully, "It seems you're very certain it's you." Hearing this, Leavian's eyes narrowed sharply because she remembered the divine oracle issued by the former saintess. The description of the future saintess in the divine oracle wasn't her. Meanwhile, at the Grand Duke's mansion, Judy had just learned that her sister had brought a snake back home. The butler said that the snake had bitten someone in the backyard, and then her sister had taken it in. This worried Judy immensely. What would she do if something happened to her sister? So, after a moment of thought, she decided to sneak into her sister's room to take a look. On the way to the room, Judy regretted spending so much time lecturing Sebastian. Otherwise, she would never have allowed such a dangerous creature near her sister. She tiptoed and pushed open the door, discovering an unidentified lump under the bed. Upon closer inspection, she realized it was Dina. She didn't know why her sister was sleeping under the bed. Just as Judy was gently covering her sister with a blanket, she suddenly noticed a pair of eyes staring back at her from the blanket. Judy was so frightened she almost cried out. The commotion woke Dina. She poked her head out from under the covers with a puzzled look. Seeing this, Judy quickly pulled her close. Seeing Judy's terrified expression, Dina followed her gaze to the blanket. She told Judy there was no danger. Then, Xiaobai crawled onto Dina's hand. "See, this child is very well-behaved and obedient." The girl, reborn 13 times, finally expressed her true feelings. In the past, she had been chosen by the goddess, possessing divine power, but was imprisoned by the temple, becoming a tool to provide power to a false saintess. And just as she was desperately searching for a way to escape, she happened to be adopted by the Grand Duke, gaining a family for the first time. Under the Grand Duke's love, the girl wasn't as sensitive as before. Any slight disturbance would have hurt her fragile heart. Now, she was no longer timid and dared to express her thoughts. She wanted to keep the white snake as her pet. But seeing the size of the snake, Judy knew it was definitely not an ordinary snake. Although Dina had the ability to tame Xiaobai and prevent it from attacking others, Judy still didn't dare to approach it easily. When asked if the Grand Duke would allow her to keep Xiaobai, Judy thought that, given her father's personality, he probably wouldn't agree. Suddenly, she noticed how her sister addressed their father. Even though she had been living with them for so long, she still addressed him so formally. Dina felt ashamed. Although she already considered them family in her heart, she somehow couldn't bring herself to call them father and sister. By this time, Judy had an idea. She whispered her plan to Dina. Dina immediately blushed upon hearing it. The next morning, everyone gathered for breakfast. Seeing them chatting animatedly, Dina felt embarrassed to interrupt and bring up the matter of Xiaobai. She wondered if she should wait until after breakfast. Judy noticed Dina's hesitant demeanor, so she turned and told everyone, "Dina has something to say this morning." Immediately, everyone's attention was focused on her. The Grand Duke encouraged her. When Dina mentioned wanting a pet, the Duke wasn't surprised. He was always eager to fulfill his daughter's wishes. But when he heard it was a snake, he was taken aback. Still hoping for a different answer, he asked if she meant one of those harmless pet snakes. Judy, from the side, reminded him that it was a venomous snake. Hearing this, the Duke immediately refused Dina's request. However, Dina still wanted to try, telling the Duke she had the ability to control Xiaobai. But controlling a snake is difficult, even for a warlock. If bitten, an antidote would be hard to create. Although Dina understood the Duke's refusal stemmed from concern for her, she still felt disheartened. Just then, she heard Judy whisper a reminder about last night's strategy, causing Dina to blush crimson. Judy had anticipated their father wouldn't agree to such a dangerous pet, so she suggested Dina appeal to his softer side. So Dina, after a long time, called him father. The Duke looked at her in surprise. I know you're worried about me, but just this once, is it okay? I want a venomous snake as a pet." The Duke remained firm. Following Judy's advice, Dina tried acting cute. "Father, not even just this once." As soon as she said it, she regretted it. Seeing the Duke frozen, she worried she'd be scolded. However, the Duke just took a breath and asked what she had just called him. Dina started to apologize, but the Duke interrupted. He told her to always call him that from now on. He recalled Dina's despairing expression when they first met. Now she was calling him father. Perhaps she was finally opening up. Then, the Duke agreed to her request, warning her to be careful of the dangers. Dina nodded, saying she understood. Judy and Dennis were happy for her. When they heard the Duke ask if she could say it again, Dina tilted her head and called him father once more. The Duke was overjoyed. Having work to do, he left, his secretary hurrying after him. Once outside, the Duke sighed and told his secretary what had happened. The secretary was surprised. Their little mistress had finally opened her heart to the Duke. Although the Duke had fallen into daughter mode again, the house had become much livelier since the young lady arrived. The Duke decided to get his precious daughter a gift. He asked his secretary if they hadn't discovered a diamond mine recently. "Yes, but it's quite small and hasn't been developed yet." The Duke immediately decided to give the mine to his daughter. The secretary's heart nearly stopped, urging the Duke to reconsider. At this age, children love sparkly things, don't they? Knowing he couldn't dissuade the doting father, the secretary said he'd bring the documents to the study shortly. In the garden, Dina had just finished her walk and was sitting on a bench, resting. Suddenly, she heard a commotion. Opening her eyes, she saw the men she'd cured of snake venom not long ago. She asked if they were back because their legs hadn't healed. Hearing they had recovered, Dina was relieved, but the men hesitated, shuffling their feet. Suddenly, they presented her with a strawberry cake. Dina was surprised by the gift. They explained it was to thank her. They'd been too scared and overwhelmed at the time to express their gratitude. "Thanks to you, miss, I'm alive." Dina had always been subjected to curses and scorn. Now, hearing these words of thanks, she couldn't help but cry. Perhaps, this time, she wouldn't be hated or rejected. She would finally be truly accepted. She was the saintess, a once-in-a-century phenomenon in the Empire. Yet in her previous 13 lives, she had lived a life worse than a dog's. No matter how she resisted, the temple would capture her. They imprisoned her, using her as a tool to extract divine power. To escape this hellish cycle, she constantly sought ways to die. But in this life, she had a loving family. Finally, she decided to defy the temple and take revenge on the false saintess, Leavian. The first time she used her divine power to help someone, she expected disgust and aversion. Instead, they thanked her and gave her gifts. A whole table full of sweets. Perhaps feeling content, Dina couldn't stop eating. A maid reminded her to eat less, even if she was happy. Dina thought she'd have just one more before stopping. Dennis came looking for Dina, asking what she was doing as he walked into the room. Dina offered Dennis a bite of what she was eating and looked up, puzzled by his visit. He wanted to see the white snake she had recently adopted. Xiaobai was coiled obediently in its basket. Upon seeing Dina, the snake couldn't resist slithering up to her. Dennis was surprised that his sister had a knack for handling snakes. He cautioned her to be careful, reminding her that this type of snake was highly venomous. Only then did Dennis reveal his true purpose, to check if Dina had any worries. He assured her that, as her older brother, he would help her find solutions. He suspected that Dina, as the saintess, carried many burdens. As Dennis waved goodbye, Dina's deeply hidden emotions overflowed. Xiaobai, sensing its owner's emotional shift, thought Dina was upset. In reality, she was experiencing a newfound happiness. Dina no longer wanted to die. She had always believed the warmth she was experiencing was temporary. She feared that the moment her saintess powers awakened, she would be captured by the temple and returned to the dark dungeon. But now, she wanted to live. Her family had shown her genuine love and endless warmth. Clutching her skirt, Dina realized this meant confronting Leavian. Leavian was the source of her suffering in 13 lifetimes. Suddenly, Dina stood up abruptly. Even if Leavian was chosen as the saintess again, Dina wouldn't stand idly by. She wanted to live with her family. She wanted to create many beautiful memories of her own. No matter what happened, she wouldn't give up. Meanwhile, the temple was holding a meeting to select the next saintess. The high priest had invited Duke Browns to attend. As soon as he entered, the priests couldn't hide their admiration. The Duke responded with a smile, stating that it was his duty as a devotee of the goddess. The high priest explained that the current saintess's health was deteriorating and she had only 1 year left to live. The news caused a stir among those present. Unbeknownst to them, it was Duke Browns who had secretly poisoned the saintess. Everyone began frantically suggesting their candidates for the next saintess. With a subtle glance from Duke Browns, a priest stood up and nominated the most obvious choice, the Duke's daughter, Leavian. The Duke was utterly devoted to his daughter. He indulged her every whim. He He not only allowed her to keep a venomous snake as a pet, but also agreed to her request to spend time with her boyfriend. Not long ago, the temple held a meeting to elect the next saintess. Everyone agreed that Leavian was the best candidate. She had received a comprehensive education from the temple and came from the Browns family, the temple's most ardent supporters. The high priest then punished 2 priests for secretly transferring a captured saintess candidate out of the temple. Fortunately, the girl was a common orphan, and her adoptive family had paid a hefty sum. Everyone considered it a win-win situation. However, Duke Browns sensed something amiss. Duke Tersia, who was known for his disdain for the temple, had taken a captured saintess candidate. He suspected there was something unusual about the girl. He instructed others to investigate. After the meeting, Duke Browns approached Leavian and inquired about recent events at the temple, particularly regarding the next saintess. Leavian hesitated, unsure how to respond. Based on the current saintess's revelation and Noah's words, she had begun to doubt her own destiny as the saintess. Startled by her father's voice, Leavian quickly composed herself. She claimed the saintess hadn't given a revelation yet. She then subtly asked what would happen if the saintess awakened in someone else. Duke Browns abruptly set down his teacup. He told Leavian that such a thing wouldn't happen. "You were born to be the saintess," he said. "Don't doubt this undeniable truth." He reassured her that even if another child awakened as the saintess, he had ways to ensure Leavian would still claim the title. Inwardly, however, Duke Browns was surprised by the current saintess's resilience. Despite his efforts, she hadn't given a revelation yet, causing his daughter to feel uneasy. He recalled Duke Tertia's unusual behavior. He decided to take measures to ensure the position of saintess was secure. Meanwhile, Dina, having finally received her father's permission, visited the small tomb in the sanctuary for the second time. Her father, the Duke, had initially refused to agree, deeply worried that his daughter might be inadvertently punished. However, he eventually succumbed to his daughter's persistent pleas and her repeated calls of Papa. Dina pushed open the door and looked around, but found no one. Then, a voice came from behind her. The person explained that he was Noah's butler. He thanked Dina profusely for visiting Noah. Seeing the man's gentle smile, Dina let down her guard. She then belatedly introduced herself. Afterwards, the man led Dina to Noah's room. Hearing the man say that Noah was sleeping again today, Dina couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. When she saw Noah sleeping, she was speechless. She hadn't thought it possible for someone to actually sleep 25 hours a day. The butler then excused himself at the opportune moment, leaving Dina and Noah alone. Dina had come to finish the portrait she had started earlier. She remembered the first time she came. Noah was also sleeping like a log. So she decided to do what she did the first time and use her power to heal Noah. As a continuous stream of power flowed into Noah, he gradually woke up. The first thing he saw was Dina beside him. Dina nervously explained that she had come to paint his portrait, but Noah didn't care about any of that. Just seeing Dina made his day. He struggled to sit up in bed, stretched, and thanked Dina for keeping her promise. He then told Dina that before she started painting, he had something else to ask her. Noah then led Dina to the backyard of the cabin. This was the place Noah came to when he sought solace. Dina started to speak, but Noah coolly asked her to call him by his name. He said he would be happier if she used his name. So Dina shyly called him Noah. He then asked her what the butler meant when he said he had been sleeping for several days. Noah was touched by Dina's concern for him. He then explained that he had an incurable disease, which was why he spent most of his time sleeping. The name of the disease was God's curse. Originally, everyone in this world possessed life force from birth. But if afflicted with God's curse, once the disease manifested, their life force would disappear. Only divine power could replace life force and thus delay death. Dina had only read about this disease in the temple's books. It was said that all those afflicted would die before adulthood. This was also the reason why Noah could only live in the sanctuary, a place rich in divine power. But now things were different because of Dina's presence. Noah asked Dina if she remembered that he had something to ask her. Seeing Dina's nervous expression, Noah smiled reassuringly and said it wasn't anything difficult. He simply wished that Dina could always stay by his side. The saintess chosen by the goddess, because of the goddess's favor, had received the divine power of immortality. But she was imprisoned in the temple, reduced to a tool to provide power to the false saintess. Every day, she was forced to eat spoiled food, and anyone in a bad mood could beat her at will. She discovered that even the person she once admired, also, to please the false saintess, exploited her. Even so, Dina still held onto the hope that Leavian would release her. Unfortunately, that was not to be. In the eyes of the false saintess, Leavian, she was nothing more than a rat. It was because of her that Leavian had lost the position of saintess that rightfully belonged to her. And this cruel woman was Dinah's half-sister. In the eyes of outsiders, Leavian was always so loving and powerful. But no one knew what kind of dirty heart lay hidden beneath her pure exterior. She tortured Dina until she was covered in wounds, until she could no longer bear it and chose suicide. But because of her incredibly powerful divine power, every time she died, she would be reborn back to the moment she was first brought to the temple. And then the painful torture would repeat itself over and over again. Over time, Dina completely lost the will to resist Leavian. She only wanted to find a way to escape this hellish cycle. Finally, on her 14th rebirth, she successfully gained a loving and protective family, and she met the boy she wanted to spend her life with. Hearing Noah suddenly say that he hoped she could always stay by his side, Dina, who had been single for 14 lifetimes, immediately blushed. She realized there was no distance between her and Noah. Before she could answer, Noah smiled and thanked her. He said it was thanks to Dina, so he could get back on his feet. That's why he thought of asking Dina, who possessed a lot of divine power. It turned out Noah was afflicted by a god's curse, requiring a substantial amount of divine power to substitute for his life force in order to live. But Noah's condition was particularly severe. Even with the divine power from 3 high priest victories, it was only enough to sustain him for half a day. Thinking of this, Dina's expression darkened. Could it be that Noah knew her identity as the Saintess and was planning to use her like Leavian? Suddenly, a call brought Dina back to the present. Your complexion doesn't look too good. Dina saw that Noah had approached her unnoticed. Are you feeling unwell somewhere? He asked, clasping both of her hands tightly. If you feel this is unreasonable, you can refuse me. I don't want you to feel burdened by this. Just follow your heart. Such gentle words caught Dina completely off guard. Noah clearly needed divine power more than anyone. But why wasn't he insistent? Instead, he was considering her feelings. So Dina promised Noah that she would come back to this place to find him, but she needed to get her family's consent. Having always been used as a tool, this was the first time she had taken the initiative to speak, and her words were somewhat hesitant. But this only made her seem more endearing. It made Noah smile. He was grateful that Dina was willing to do this for him. And in return, if there was anything he could do to help Dina in the future, he would be completely at her disposal. Just then, a gaze enveloped Dina completely. She abruptly turned her head, but saw no one. Although Noah also said there were only the 2 of them around, Dina truly felt it. Suddenly, a woman far away in the temple abruptly opened her eyes. She was the current saintess of the temple. Because of her frail body, she had been bedridden for a long time. At this moment, her face was full of disbelief. She clearly saw the power of the next saintess appear on that child. According to the goddess's prophecy, the next saintess was supposed to be Leavian, born into the Browns family. Could it be that the goddess's prophecy had changed? Just as she was puzzled, Leavian's voice came from outside. She had intended to get out of bed to greet her, but suddenly froze. Leavian not only declared herself a Saintess candidate, but also ordered the priest at the door to increase the Saintess's medication dosage. Hearing this, the Saintess finally understood. Her current state was all thanks to Leavian. The medicine Leavian had been giving her all this time was actually poison that weakened her divine power. For a moment, she found it hard to accept the reality. She accidentally knocked a photo off her bedside table. The 2 people outside heard the noise from inside the room. Leavian pushed the door open. Saintess, are you awake? She found the Saintess sleeping peacefully in bed. After Leavian left, the Saintess had already made up her mind. She absolutely could not let Leavian's plan succeed. She had to find that child as soon as possible. That child was the true next Saintess who inherited the divine power from the goddess's prophecy.